All right, we're streaming a little differently today. Streaming from my laptop. Because I don't know what is going on with Spectrum, but everything is running so slowly. Let's check in. How are we all doing? How are we doing? I'm just getting the conference call line up for anybody who wants to join us there. Okay. I'm just going to call in for it. I'm hoping that might actually fix some of the delay with it too.
Thank you for choosing freeconferencecall.com. You're helping people around the world communicate for free.
Happy Monday, yes.
You are the only participant in the conference.
That's fine. We'll just turn it down. Have a little background music in case somebody pops on there. All right. Good afternoon. I'm doing well. Yes, let's check in. Let's check in. How are we all doing? How are all the things? Yeah, last week I was hoping for a little more drama out of y'all post. I didn't really get it, so I brought my own drama today. Just wondering what is going on here. Nothing fancy. But y'all not gonna stop me from getting my drama. That's all. So I am well. How are you? How is your semester going? How is the semester? I tried to be real. I know. But the thing was, you weren't supposed to necessarily be real. I mean, honestly, who in this class, who in this space, who's been here for the last, we in week 5, right? You've been here for this long. We know nobody here thinks like that. Like that's going to be a given, So you weren't supposed to be real, right? You were supposed to be somebody else, get in somebody else's mind. Yeah, I try to be a menace. I had a good day yesterday. Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Yes. So far, not bad, but March is heavy, so I'm a little stressed. Okay, I feel that. Make sure that you mind your self-care, whatever is stressing you out. Semester is good. Just got a grip on things. Excellent. I'm happy to hear that. Listen, when y'all start getting into the groove and you start to settle into the semester, this is the calm, right? It's like the eye of the hurricane. This is the calm part. So enjoy it too. Honestly feel like I have a better understanding of how to do this online learning stuff. Okay, good. Yes. Give yourself some time, right? It's all an adjustment. Okay. So, what's going on in the world? What's happening out there? But I'm doing all right. I got a couple books coming today, so I'm happy about that. Okay, good. It's good getting ish done. All right. Yeah. Did anybody do anything special for yourselves? Did you do something special for yourself in the last week? Just curious. I know we are talking about what's going on in the world, but figured I'd ask. Yeah, what's happening out there? What is going on in the world around us? I haven't had a chance to check out the news today, other than just a quick scroll earlier. So tell me what's happening. What's going on out there, community? What do I need to know about? A new Biggie documentary just came out today. Okay. Yeah, I was planning on showing that for one of our weeks, too. I saw the trailer for that a couple of weeks ago. I'm excited to see that. Yes, I started back walking and working out. Self-care. Come on, self-care. Come on, self-care. Candace Owens said Trump was a Sorry, I needed a second. I don't even like feminism, to be honest with you. Feminism is not made for us. However, that is even a stretch. It's a stretch when it's even something you don't necessarily like and you're just side-eyeing it. California is starting to open up more and more people are getting the vaccine. Yes, we are seeing more businesses starting to open. We're also seeing a lot of the impact, right? Like when you drive through the communities, you can see the stores that didn't make it. They couldn't, they couldn't hang. So we see a lot on both ends with that. How y'all feel about the vaccines? I saw an article the other day that was like, oh, people shouldn't be so quick to judge the Johnson and Johnson vaccine, and I'm like, Johnson and Johnson literally gave people cancer. I think that's something that we should look at a little bit closely, right? So how do you feel about it? How do you feel about the vaccines? I'm not planning to get one if I don't have to. I'm buying myself the coffee maker I've been wanting for a while. It's expensive, but might as well. Yes. Come on. Yes. Get the good coffee maker. Gas prices going the fuck up. Yes, they are. Every single day. I think it was like there's only been one day in like the last month and a half or something like that where gas prices have not gone up. Shaka Khan has a new song called I Love Myself, which talks about self-care. Okay. I'll definitely check that out. I like Shaka Khan. 66% effective too, so I'm passing on that one. Right. 66% effective against one of the strains. It doesn't do anything for the other ones as far as we know, or as far as they've told us, or whatever, right? My mom got her vax since she's a caretaker for my nephew. Yeah, like caretakers kind of have to, like little school teachers, they have to, the grocery store people, so like there's cause for it, right? But at the same time, there's understandable reasons for why folks would still have pause. Absolutely, I'm not taking shit from Johnson and Johnson. Right, gave people cancer. Personally, won't get it, but all the other people getting it. Yeah, I'm not messing with it. Vaccines take decades to actually be safe to take. Right, so I'm skeptical, but I'll get it if I have to. Exactly, right? So it's not usually an overnight type of thing. I don't trust them yet until it's been a good while. I'm scared to get it and rather stick to the Dr. Sebi nutritional guide more than getting the vax. Okay. Yeah, Dr. Sebi has been coming around, hasn't he? Just making a whole comeback. Dr. Sebi is like a naturalist. He's like a naturalist, herbalist type. Very, very, very clean eating, which for Americans is very, very difficult. That is not a diet for the faint of heart. Even your water, like even the water that you intake on this diet is under scrutiny. Biden bombed Syria. Oh yeah? What you think about that? I haven't seen that story, so I can't really talk about it. So you tell me. I work for the county and it hasn't been mandated yet, but it's coming. That's nice. Dr. Sebi at Kenya, yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have a little, do me a favor and repost that somewhere else after class, because I'm probably not going to see this link again, but I appreciate you sharing that link. And we'll come back to that story. I think that's really important for us to talk about. We'll come back to that story next class. I think vaccines take years since we're not all focused on one particular disease at a time, but several. Exactly, right. And then you only have so much to go off of from this first round of sicknesses. So you're getting the vaccines from antibodies from people who were sick, right, who are no longer sick because their body fought it off, right? That's where you get the antibodies from. That's what they make the vaccines out of. So you've only got so many. Ma'am. Hold on, I gotta put them back. Come, let's go. Come on. Come on. Jen, let's go. Sorry about that. Crystal has been a stickler since we cleaned these carpets, so they got to be downstairs for a little bit longer. I haven't had a chance to wipe their paws off yet, so they can come up. But yeah, so that's where they're getting the antibodies to make the vaccines from. So you only have so many people to get them from the first round. So it's going to take a long time because you need to get more people. You need to get more access to more antibodies, especially as things are, shifting and mutating and all of that. So, yeah. Okay. Okay, good. All right. So we are going to recap what we talked about last class. And I wanted to give you like a timeline. So I did extra work that I was not necessarily paid to do to make sure that you could understand what we were talking about. And again, this is just a combination of the information that I have come up with. So there's a lot of competing information. The background music, yeah, that's the conference call line. When nobody's on it, that's what it does. So this is just from me, right? From the information that I took, that I have processed. There's a lot of competing information out there. So that means everyone's not going to agree with this timeline. That's fine, right? Because the truth of the matter is we can only go off of what we have. And we already know that what we have is a lot of tainted documents, right? It's a lot of misplaced files. It's a lot of things that just weren't reported, right? There's a lot of stories that are lost. There's a lot of history that is lost because it wasn't recorded or passed down. So we only have so much to go off of in the first place, right? So this is the best that I can come up with from the research that I have done. All right? So, and you'll see everything we talked about last class, right? So 13 to 1400s, we've primarily got France and Spain, who are the leaders in developing the transatlantic slave trade, right? Oh, Taft, that's terrible. Please don't do that. Taft is a shoe brand. Monday. Okay, so we've got the beginning of the transatlantic slave trade, right? Hold on, I just heard something on there. Nothing now. Okay. All right. So remember, we've got these terms that are coming up, and they're primarily coming out of French language, Spanish language, the Romance languages. And so they all kind of look and sound the same, and they all mean the same thing. And it's just a visual of looking at something that is black, right? So the color black, like black, right? The black. That's it. So it was very, very flat, right? There wasn't like extra context. There wasn't a whole lot of that being added at first because there wasn't, that history yet. The history has to develop in order for that context to develop too. So moving down into the 15 and 1600s, European interest in the transatlantic slave trade is increasing because there's a lot of money that's coming out of this now, right? Not necessarily money in terms of how we know it, but money in terms of free labor, right? Money in terms of access to other lands that they didn't have access to before because they took it over, right? So they're gaining a lot of gall in this too. So colonization is increasing here, right? So Great Britain in particular, right, they're bringing a lot more terms. So they're also bringing a baseline term, right, which is not strong enough, again, without context. There's no context here yet. So we're still in this building phase, right? These folks are not human, so it's okay for them to just be colors, right? These folks are not human. It's okay for them to just be colors. Keep in mind that the education systems in Europe value multilingualism. And so most of these folks speak all these languages too. So it's easy for them to change these terms and not mix them up, right? They literally learn this in school. This is what they do. This is why even today, a high school diploma in Europe is about the equivalent of our bachelor's degree. No fucking lie. You can look that up, right? So their education systems are already stronger, and they're already valuing this interconnectedness, right, through this multilingualism. So it's nothing for them, right? This is why when we're talking about this linguistic issue down here, right, we're really talking about a linguistic issue among the enslaved and among folks who are not directly from these places, right? All right. 17 and 1800s. So plantation enslavement has already begun, but now it is starting to increase. So remember when you looked at the 2-minute slave trade, right? The 2-minute slave trade, you saw that it started to really pick up around this time, the 17 and 1800s. It starts getting real fast, more boats, bigger boats, right? So we're peaking. Here we go again. See, Taft. Shoes, man. Got shoes on the brain. Crystal likes that brand. Maybe this my subconscious telling me I should buy her shoes. I don't know. All right. So these folks, right? These folks may or may not at this point be directly from Britain, right? At this point, we've got generations of folks who are also being born, right, from the colonizer side, who are also being born in and around these plantations, right? Because who's running them? The families, the family generational plantations, right? That's when you still hear them say this. That video, no, that wasn't this class. That was another class. There was a video that I showed another class that showed this plantation owner, and she was saying, you know, it's been in our family for 7 generations. Well, 7 generations means at least 7 generations of people that have been born there, right? People are being born here. So the language is changing too, just naturally, right? That naturally happens. So we're adding terms here, right? Because these folks don't have the same type of education necessarily. So here we're really focusing on this northern hemisphere, right? This northern hemisphere, this North America area, the Caribbean, right? We're really focusing here, right? Because down in Central and South America, they're heavily speaking Spanish still, right? They're heavily speaking Spanish. So what are they speaking here? Well, they're still speaking English, but they're not really speaking English, right? Because they're not speaking the Queen's English, right? Because what's going on in the 17 and 1800s? Well, they're trying to get away from Great Britain, right? These white folk are like, no, we don't want to be under your rule no more. How ironic. We don't want to be under your rule no more. We're gonna dump all your tea in the harbor, and then we're gonna write a Declaration of Independence. And slave. No, nobody's talking to you. Then we're gonna add a couple of amendments because, you know, the ones who did it the first time didn't really get it to our liking. So we're gonna just change a couple of things. Not enslavement. No. That's not what we're doing here. You get the point. All right. So we're adding terms here because now we're entering a linguistic issue from this northern hemisphere, from these folks who are trying to get away from Great Britain, who are trying to start America and be free and all that shit, right? We're also seeing a popularization of other terms too. So other terms like mulatto still exist in this time, right? They still exist here. Well, where did they come from? They came from the same place, right? This needing to name this new development in slaves, right? In their slaves and the slave culture and what is created when a slave and a slave get together, or a slave and a non-slave. Like, that's essentially where race in general is coming from. All of these needs for naming ourselves in this very simplistic way, right? Well, it's for tracking. So what mulatto means is a mixture of a horse and a donkey, right? So it's a mule. And what a mule is, it's a work animal that is also not supposed to be able to reproduce, right? So you're an abomination completely, right? You are not able to reproduce by yourself. So we're popularizing these terms and adding context. Context is starting to enter here, right? Well, context is starting to enter here because now we've had time to build up history behind these terms and the way that they've been used, okay? So both of these are going to carry the same meaning at first because linguistically, we're talking about folks who were taken from one continent, right, Africa, by folks who spoke another language separate from theirs. The African peoples also tend to be multilingual, by the way. So multilingual already, having to learn the slave owner's language, maybe having to learn a new slave owner's language, maybe having to learn a new slave owner's language. Come on, man, listen. And none of it was planned, right? It's all forced learning. This is forced learning. So you're definitely going to fuck it up, right? So we're seeing this difference between the ER and the A only when we start getting to the 1900s to today, okay? Um, Backtrack really quickly. This is what a basic like supply and demand looks like, right? So you have the how much something is worth, right? The money over the quantity, right? So the more money you can possibly get out of something, right? That means that you need more of that thing, right? To get more of the money. This also works for things that are very high priced, right? So if it's a high price, right? If the price is really high like that, right? Well, you don't need anywhere near as much money, right? You don't need anywhere near as much quantity to make the same amount of money. See that? So slave value is increasing, right? So they don't necessarily need more slaves in order to get more money, right? But the more you have, the more you're going to make, no matter what the value is. But if you're constantly increasing that value as well, I mean, come on, capitalism, right? This is young capitalism at work. So we want more slaves, and this is why it's going to continue on, right? So even with, I'm not giving him no more credit. I'm not talking about him no more. Even after Juneteenth, right? So we see the introduction of the 13th Amendment, right? The 13th Amendment, which talks about the freedom of the enslaved, except for convictions of crimes and yeah, right. So even with these, right, at no point was there a differentiation here, right? Because the point in this time is to unify. So where did we come into this reclaiming? Well, a reclaiming idea is very modern. The idea that we can reclaim these terms is very modern. I'm going to put that right here, reclaim, right? Like you're reclaiming your time. I'm reclaiming my time. So we had a context shift with the terms, right? Which was really a cultural development, right? It's not like there was a conversation among all the black people where we said, yeah, you know what? I kind of like the way it sounds. Maybe we can just, do what they did and take it and turn it into what we want. There was no conversation like that happened, right? So that means that we are the ones that did introduce the context, right? We introduced this contextual differentiation. And so this, right, is what fuels most folks in their conviction that only black folks should be able to use the term, right? Nobody else should be able to use this term because we added the context, right? That's the line of thought. Nobody should be able to use this term, right? Because, again, that differentiation, they're making this distinction here. Nobody should be able to use this term because this is what we're going to kind of pile all this history on by itself, right? But, I mean, how authentic is that, right? For me, right? For me, I think that there's a lot of internalized and a lot of embedded self-hate within the community, right? To where we still want to be something other than the relatives of the enslaved, right? Like there's this, like it's like a dragging, like there's something dragging behind us all the time. And so how do we do that, right? Well, at some point, you have to name yourself. And so you take a note from like Roots, right? With the Kunta Kinte, we talked about that last class too. You take a page out of that book, well, what do? You are going to tell them who you are, right? The difference being, Kunta Kinte wanted other people to call him Kunta Kinte, right? But as we understand, we don't want other people to call us really anything, but, particularly not, right? Okay, so with that, the post last week was intentionally designed for you to kind of play the role of these people, right? So there were people who were like, oh, I don't want to, I was trying to come up with something without bringing up enslavement, and the point was that you can't for that kind of an argument, right? You can't not bring it up because all of this historical connection is relative to that conversation, right? So why are we afraid to bring up what is necessary to bring up? Um, the other thing that happened with the post was people were so afraid of what other folks were going to think about them, even though everyone is doing the exact same assignment. And we all know it's just an assignment. Y'all have figured out by now that I am batshit crazy. I listen. Have some fun. Loosen up a little bit. Y'all got your ties on. Man, take them off. Take them off. All right. Let's see. I agree. My cousin told me his ancestors weren't enslaved, and I was like, huh? Mind you, he is like 33. Yeah. See, we gotta help these folks. We gotta help our folks. We have to let them know where we come from. Because if we don't, they're gonna tell us for us, like they've been doing. I said people who still live in the past are the only ones who get mad over the N-word. No, for sure not. But I mean, really, who can honestly live in the past? You can't live in the past. You can only live in the present. You can only live in this moment. We can't even live in 5 minutes ago. So living in the past is an oxymoron, first and foremost, right? Now, how do you live in the past with something that is still relevant today? You can't live in the past with something that is still relevant today, right? You can't say it's old shit if it's still happening shit, right? And so that is another reason that we have to make sure that we're keeping the context together. I hope that makes sense. I gave up. I cut him off because he is homophobic and sexist and he voted for Trump, so that's a lost cause. I stopped trying. Oh, yeah. Sometimes you gotta let people go for your own self-care. I understand that. There has always been this weird obsession of not wanting to be just black because of our history, and that was just so right. I remember when I was in middle school, right, that was a really big thing. Nobody wanted to just be black. Like, it was a celebration to find out that you were something else, right? And people would pretend to be something else. You know, you would pretend that you were mixed with whatever, you know, because you could sort of get away with it because you kind of looked like it. And then, bam, we're all surprised that people like Rachel Dolezal exist. Come on. This is a thing that we all go through. There's absolutely this obsession, right? Because we've been taught to value that which is European and that which reflects European society and aesthetics, you know? My thing is, why do you want to be called a derogatory name and regress back as whites want to continue to use it as an inferiority complex? Right. And so that is an argument to the other side, right? So again, right, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not going to tell you, you know, everybody needs to stop using this word. Like, personally, I think we need to come up with a consensus one way or another and fucking do it, right? We need to come up with something to do together, right? Because all it's really doing is creating a divide. You know, we get offended before we get interested in making things better, right? And we don't allow that offense to then lead into some sort of action and some sort of change, right? It just sits there. So, like, think about the way that you handled the question that was asked, right? If you were the type that looked at this question and just kind of said, nah, fuck this bitch, right? Like, no, you're crazy, right? I know some of you did. I know you did. Because I looked at myself when I'm writing these questions sometimes, like, are you sure? You gonna hit send? Okay, right? But why are we so shocked, right? Why are we so shocked with all of this embeddedness that we're also dealing with? I mean, think about colorism, for example, right? Like, we all don't want to be called a derogatory name, but then we also don't jump to defense when someone calls internally, right? Or somebody says something internally that is equally offensive to that person. Like the comments that light-skinned Keisha was making, or the comments that who else? Mulatto made comments too, right? A bunch of them, right? They make comments about darker skinned women, and folks don't really step in and say anything until after, until they're famous already, or like something else has to occur, right? That pisses off the wrong person. Well, why are we all not the wrong person? We all need to be the wrong person. Going back up the comments. The point in what I was saying in that was that's one way that I can identify for us to kind of combat that inferiority complex. We have to do it head on. And if we're not willing to, it's going to make it much harder. It would piss me off because I'm like, our last name is French for a reason. Like, exactly. How you think we have white in our blood? The plantations in Louisiana are still there. It's so frustrating. And they are not trying to let them go neither. Like, plantation owners, they love those houses. They love those plantation style houses. I drove past a hotel that was called Plantation Inn and Suites in West Virginia, and a Negro Mountain, right? And West Virginia is not even technically the South, but ask them, they think they're the deep South, right? Yeah, this need to hold on to the plantations by themselves is right. But then beg the question that somebody else asked on the post, right? What right do we have essentially to force others to get rid of their history? What do y'all think about that? When history repeats itself, it sucks. Not always. History can be very good. Well, Negus is an African king back in antiquity, perhaps. Yes. I'm not sure where that was fitting in. I think I'm late on that comment. I was looking at the question like, I beg you. Right, I bet. I honestly feel like we tried to take that word back in order to have something of our own, even if it's terrible. I feel like it gives Black people the idea that we have something we can exclude others from. Right, and that's a good point to bring up too, right? When you are part of the have-nots, the one thing that you want is to have, even if it's not good for you. I mean, how many people stay in shitty relationships because you'd rather be with somebody than be by yourself, right? The same thing, right? We do things that aren't good for us all the time. People know that they shouldn't eat cheese, and they eat cheese anyway, and then they wonder why their stomachs hurt. Crystal. We do it all the time, right? So yeah, that's absolutely a plausible idea that you can use to look at this too, right? That maybe it's not necessarily even about the word itself. Maybe it's about wanting to have something. Like chitlins, right? Because we've been excluded from a bunch of things, and even if it isn't a word, we devise will gatekeep it because Black culture in itself we can't keep to ourselves, like chitlins. My dad made chitlins once, and my mom said never again. She was not allowing that shit in the house no more. It was terrible. It smelled so bad. And remember, I ain't never smelled chitlins before. Chitlins is the pig intestines. That's not something you want cooked and hot and smelling and just Whew, sorry. Perhaps we can replace the N word with making something of our own by being a positive word. Okay, negus, if we must call ourselves something other than brother and sister. Okay, now I'm understanding your comment. Yes, absolutely, right? And that's one of the things that I usually advocate for. Why don't we just find something else? Like, let's just go ahead and set this one down. There's so many other opportunities to not even like find old words, but to just create a new one. We do it all the time. You mean to tell me every single summer it's a new word for being drunk, but we ain't come up with a new word for the N-word yet? Really? Where's our priorities at? I feel like we could do it. We are creative enough that we could come up with something grand if we just do it. I find it weird how people say that African Americans. Hold on, people were adding comments. I find it weird how people say they hate African Americans, but they want us to work their fields. Yes, exactly. That is the externalized depiction of that hate, right? Like, I don't want you to sit at my table, but you can make sure that I get the food that gets to it. They're disgusting, but my parents eat them. Oh, your parents. Whew. You know what? Everybody likes something different. Everybody likes something different. My friend said chitlins are good with a lot of... No, they're not. And it's like, if you have to load it with hot sauce, then it's not good. Right. I mean, I love hot sauce now. I am a hot sauce fanatic. I love me some good hot sauce. But ain't no amount of hot sauce in the world good enough to make some chitlins taste good. Not sorry. On God, please tell someone to tell my mom to let them chitlins go. Right. Through that, we should make a new word. Right. When white people say they are stealing our jobs, but we are doing the jobs that they look down on. You know what? Y'all here. You're here. I see y'all. I see you. Okay. All right. So, where we at? Okay, good timing. Let's start our conversation about gender. So, what we're going to do today is go over the gender unicorn just so that you have it for the post. And then the next class is when we're going to talk about what all of this has to do with the readings for this week. Okay? Mad over jobs they would have never done anyway. That part. All right, so somebody tell me, also, what jobs are we taking that they can so easily lose? Y'all just coming with the tea today. Oh, okay. I brought the drama, so y'all gonna bring some drama for me. Yes. Come with the drama. Tell me about this gender unicorn. There's 5 things that's on it. What's on it? There's 5 different categories. What are they? I'm just gonna draw us a little reference point here. There we go. That's good enough, right? It's like a little kid pretending to be a unicorn. It's gonna be my unicorn today. All right, so we've got gender identity. So we've got gender identity. And then we've got gender expression. Then what do we have? Biological sex. Right? Or sex assigned at birth. Okay. And then, emotional attraction and physical attraction. Emotional attraction and physical attraction. Okay. All right. So we'll start right at the top. Okay? We'll start right at the top. What is gender identity? What do you think gender identity is? What do you think gender identity is? It's how you think about yourself. Right. This is your conversation with me, myself, and I. Right? This is who I believe I am. This is who I feel I am. Right? This is my interaction with me and myself. That's it. So this is supposed to be really independent. Yeah, knowing who you are and what satisfies your specific needs. So this is going to act as a guide towards that, right? This is going to act as a guide towards that. So this should be really independent, but it's really not, because the society that we live in doesn't really allow for independence, right? The free country don't really let you be free. So I'm gonna write that it should be independent here, right? But social views really impact the way that we think about ourselves, right? Like, think about when you get up and you get dressed in the morning, right? When you get up and you start thinking about just you in general, right? Well, you're already coming up with ideas of things that you should be doing or that you should be saying in order to let other people know who you are, right? So you're starting your own gender identity with other people, right? We work to appease other people so often. Um, think about how many people would take my class and look at me and say that I'm unprofessional. Well, why am I unprofessional? I'm unprofessional because I don't dress like other people. I'm unprofessional because I don't always speak like I got 3 master's degrees. I'm unprofessional because sometimes I'd be a minute late, right? If I were to take all of those things, right, well, how would that impact my gender identity? People would look at me as being less feminine, right? People would look at me as being less feminine. So if we're looking at these things like they're on a little spectrum, right? Imagine these dots here move, and you've got degrees of masculinity and you've got degrees of femininity. Well, we know that there are stereotypes that go along with those degrees. So for folks who identify or who are supposed to identify themselves as being more feminine than masculine, right? Well, what are some of those traits you're supposed to have? You're supposed to be punctual, right? You're supposed to be quiet. You're supposed to kind of blend in and be in the background, right? Seen and not heard type thing, right? So for folks who are looking at me and saying, well, your gender identity is confusing me at this point because you're not doing the thing that I'm expecting you to do, right? You're not acting or thinking or behaving in the way that I'm expecting you to do, right? We're going to come back to that. All right, gender expression. Same thing here, right? Same thing. We're talking about something that is spectrumized, right? There's degrees of masculinity and there are degrees of femininity. What is gender expression? Where do we find that at? Yeah, I'm definitely not supposed to cuss. My whole department cusses, though. I dare somebody to tell me they can't. TV shows toes. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what your comment means, Kenyon. Oh, okay, got it. Toys. Right, so we're being groomed here, right? That social view is part of the grooming. We're going to come right back to that thought. How you express yourself, either masculine or feminine, or even both. Exactly, right? So this is the external. This is an external expression of self. So you had a conversation with yourself about who you are. In that conversation, you decided this is the thing that I'm going to put on today to demonstrate to the rest of the world who I am, right? That's what gender expression is. It's the external representation of gender, of a perceived gender. Of a perceived gender. Now, does your gender expression and your gender identity always have to match? Do they always match? Does gender expression and gender identity always match? No, absolutely not. When don't they match? Give me an example of a time when gender expression and gender identity would not match. So you think about yourself in one way, but you may or may not be externally expressing yourself to match the way that you think about yourself. Give me an example of a time. A trans person who isn't out yet. That's a great example. Yeah, that's a great example. So folks may or may not make these match, right? It may not match for safety, right? If there's a safety question, right? For folks who are trans, for example, right? It's a question of preparedness. Are you ready to make those things match, right? Have you had enough time to have this conversation with yourself to start developing your external expression? Because it does take time. It's not an overnight thing. It takes folks a long time. It takes all of us a long time. We're constantly changing our styles, right? In front of your parents, yeah, right? So who is around matters for how you're going to behave, right? For this external expression, right? For example, I identify as femme, but sometimes I wear masculine clothing. Absolutely, right? When you go to the gym, for example, that's a commonplace. That's a common place for folks to either dress more or less feminine or masculine, right? So, location, right? There's a question of location. That's going to matter. There's also a question of activities. There's a question of activities. Think about this. If you're a supermodel, but you decide that you want to go hiking, are you going to wear what you wore to the Victoria's Secret fashion show last year? No, right? You're going to wear hiking gear. And so your external expression may not fit exactly how you think about yourself on a regular basis, right? Because you're bending it to meet the needs of this activity instead. And sometimes someone's gender expression changes a lot. So if it's always changing, it can't always match their gender identity. Exactly, right? It cannot always match. It will not always match for anyone, right? But we get into ruts when we have this expectation that there's singular ideas of how we're supposed to look at ourselves and how other people are supposed to be able to see us, right? In the same way that we've talked about race. So gender, as you can see, is very watered down too for how we understand it today. This the point in the gender unicorn. So actually, the gender unicorn was created to help schools better assist their trans students to better learn about gender in all of these different ways. So what the schools actually ended up learning from this is that this is a great tool for anybody to better learn about themselves. And so that also has helped destigmatize some educational settings for trans students too. So it's a dope tool. Okay. Biological sex. This is kind of the most simplistic one. This is the most simplistic piece. There's only so many options we have here. What are these options that we have here for biological sex or sex assigned at birth? The sexual organs that you were born with. Exactly, right? And so you're either born with a penis, right? Or you're born with a vagina, or you're born with both, or none, right? So male, female, and intersex, exactly. It's also non-sexed, not asex. So asex is asex is in the attraction piece. We're not going to go into all of that right now, but when you're non-sexed, right, you don't have functioning organs, reproductive organs. Yeah, that can happen. Scientific anomalies can always happen, right? This is the one thing that we learned from Jurassic Park, right? Life finds a way, no matter what. So even in like think about like way back in school when you were learning about like different animals and how some animals can reproduce asexually, right? And so what does that mean? That means that they basically clone themselves, right? And so they don't have a need for traditional sex organs, so they forego traditional sex organs in order to reproduce in a way that works for their specific species. So everyone doesn't even have to reproduce the same way. And so this is why we call this biological sex or sex assigned at birth instead of reproductive organs, for example. They all don't reproduce. And think about like sterilization, right? There are people who literally cannot reproduce and things like that. So yeah, all kinds of anomalies can happen. So there are folks who are assigned male. There are folks who are assigned female, right? And so if you're assigned male, the expectation is you have a penis, you have testes, that kind of thing. Assigned female, you have a vagina, you have ovaries, right? And you have intersex. Intersex can have any combination, right? Any level of combination. Internationally, right? Internationally, intersex folks are treated differently everywhere. And so there are places that really revere them and believe that they are like closer to God, for example. Same thing with trans people, right? There are places in the world that look at them as though they are, the step down or closer to deities and things like that. So when you think about intersex, right, what I don't want you to think about is like that old school term hermaphrodite, right? Because that essentially boiled intersex folks down to having two full sets of functioning organs, and that's not accurate. And then it was also used as a slur, so we'll keep that in mind too. If you're interested in learning more about intersex folks too, Caster Semenya, who was a runner for South Africa, is bringing her case back up. She was dismissed from the Athletic Association, the IAAF, because she is an intersex athlete. She identifies as a woman. She has been raised as a woman. Like she has, well, I'm not going to go into her medical stuff because it's not really relevant. The point being here was that she has more testosterone than many of her competitors do. And so the IAAF looked at that and said, well, that's an advantage, and you need to take medication in order to bring your testosterone levels down to match everybody else's. But the sports world is not doing the same thing with people like Michael Phelps, who naturally doesn't make as much lactic acid, and that's why he can do the things that he does in the pool. He doesn't feel the same type of pain that other people feel. Nobody's looking at him and saying, well, you need to increase your lactic acid because that's an advantage. Right? So, intersex folks definitely go through the ringer, especially when they're people of color. Okay. So, the last note that I'll make here is the sex assigned at birth, right? So, usually folks will call themselves like AFAB, or AMAB. When they're part of the LGBT community, these are popularized terms because they point specifically to biological features instead of marginalizing folks who do not identify with the typical biological features. So, AFAB and AMAB just means assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth. Okay, let's get into the attractions. What is emotional attraction? What does that mean? What is emotional attraction? When you are emotionally attracted to somebody, anybody. It can mean love. Sure. That's one option. Yeah. I mean, you like somebody. They can, but everyone you're emotionally attracted to doesn't set your soul on fire. So, think about when we were talking about in, I think it was week 1, when we were talking about trust, right? When you see something registers with you, and your brain is automatically telling you whether or not you trust it. You don't trust that person, you don't trust that thing, you don't trust that place, right? There's something about it that you don't trust. Well, what you're actually saying is that you're not attracted to whatever that thing is. right? You looked at something and you saw that there's something about it you don't like, right? You're not attracted to it. It's not drawing you in, right? And so emotional attraction can go far beyond, well, I mean, physical attraction too, but largely emotional attraction can go far beyond just your intimate relationship. So you are also talking about your intimate relationships, right? Because the point in intimate relationships that you build is to have that emotional attraction, because that's going to feed the longevity of that relationship, right? Hold on, let me look at these comments real quick. So basically, you can be emotionally attracted to somebody, but not romantically or physically. I'm more emotionally attracted to females than males. Yes. So you can be emotionally attracted to somebody without being romantically or physically attracted to them. Yes. And vice versa. It's like one night stands. That's why people have those, right? You're just in it for the sex, for the one night. Your emotional attraction to certain people, and if you don't feel that emotional attraction to anyone, I think you're still typing, so I'm gonna wait. Okay, so, right, emotional attraction. You see something, you like it. You're like, this is something that I would like to have around, right? I am emotionally attracted to this thing. You're also driving away the things that you don't like, right? Because there's something that doesn't sit well with you. So this can be about anybody. It can be about family, friends, anybody. It could be about the bingus, right? It could be about my classroom, anything, right? So the difference between emotional attraction and physical attraction is that physical is taking a next step, right? It's taking everything a little bit further. So physical attraction is going to define whether or not you're going to stay somewhere, right? Because you're either physically attracted to a space, or you're physically attracted to a person, or you're not, right? Um, Physical attraction can trump emotional attraction, as well as emotional attraction can trump physical attraction, right? Like we just said, with the example of having a long-term relationship versus having one-night stands. Um, Physical attraction um, is quick, right? Physical attraction is quick as compared to emotional attraction. Emotional attraction usually takes time to build, right? So you have this idea of trust in your mind already. So you saw something and you liked it. You have that physical attraction. You saw something. There's something about it. It's sitting well in your soul. You want to keep it, right? Okay, great. Well, when you're physically attracted, right, you are less in. How do I want to put this? You're more instinctual. Let me put it like that. You're more instinctual, right? So think about the last time somebody walked past you and you were like, damn, they fine. You don't know nothing about that person, right? Are you going to go home with that person? Are you going to leave with them? Well, if you only had physical attraction by itself, right? And if this is the only thing that you're interested in at that moment, you might. You might, right? Like, I was watching the Centoya Brown story last night, the documentary on, I think it's on Netflix. Um, and her side of the story is that she was walking to Sonic because the guy that she was with, her pimp, was basically telling her she needed to get out of the street and get some money, right? So she was walking to Sonic and gets picked up by this man, right? But she don't have no emotional attraction to this man. What does she have? She don't really have physical attraction to the man. She has physical attraction to the man's money, right? Because literally it's her job at that point, right? It's her job to have physical attraction to his money. So yeah, she's going in the truck. She went in the truck when she went home. I don't remember what kind of car it was, but whatever. She went to his house, right? And that's where he ended up dead. Anyway, stranger danger. Yeah, you right. Listen, I don't put nothing past nobody. People try to pretend that they're so much like more angelic than they actually are, especially in classrooms, right? Y'all are so like PG sometimes in the comments, and it cracks me up because I know you're not like that in real life. Stranger danger, exactly. Okay. Any questions, comments, ideas, things you want to add, things you feel like I missed or want to talk about more? This was a really quick version. This was a really quick version of that training that I do. So I actually do a gender training for the. Well, I was doing a gender training for the Philadelphia Trans Wellness Conference, which is the largest transgender and intersex health and wellness fair in the world. And so I was training, hundreds of people between volunteers and folks who were coming to join the conference who were not part of the community. Right, I spent many years and many hours training those folks on gender. It's uncomfortable to expose yourself like that. It can be. I'm not sure what you're exactly referring to, but it sure can be uncomfortable to expose yourself. Some people like that though. Some people like bold. Well, we can't start talking about what we do in bed out of nowhere. Why not? Dudes do it all the time to y'all, don't they? Don't tell me they don't be hitting on y'all. Listen, I know because we go through it too. Listen, if they can come up and just start talking about whatever they trying to do, why can't we have regular ass conversations? This is why so many of us have teen pregnancy issues and why we have dropout rates that's so high and everything and STD rates and all that, because we don't talk about sex. It's taboo. People are afraid of it. No, we can't talk about that. No, it's what I do in my own time. Well, yes, it's what you do and hopefully your own time. Don't be on Zoom or anything like that, but like, it's still regular. It's regular. And if we don't have these conversations, there are other real issues that will come out of not having those conversations. Just like with the N-word. Look where we at. Look where we at. How many people have honestly used this term and never knew any of the history behind it? Right? Well, you never knew any of the history behind it because you never had a conversation about it. Hold on. I saw somebody want to be my friend. Yeah, dudes hit on me all the time. It happens. We had these dudes that called us dykes at the beach like a couple weeks ago. And they do that when they're upset. They start slinging things when they're upset because they want to say other things, but it's more than one person around, so they're not bold enough, so they're just going to sling that instead. Really, if I was by myself, I know what you would have said. Like, come on, stop it. I hate that. Like, what if I just wanted to be your friend, homie? Right. Okay, not my friend. Somebody's friend. Just had a Zoom call about sex last week. Girl, we better. Side bitches are coming. Yes, and we gotta keep them in check. I don't play with them. Wait, I think that's the continuation. On me, but when I say that dude when I say that dude got a fat ass, I'm wrong. Yeah, they hate that. They hate that. Or they hate when you say the same things back, right? They hate when you say the same things back to them, right? Well, have you ever tried men? That's usually my go-to one because, usually the one that gets thrown at me. Well, how do you know? Have you ever tried men? Have you, sir? An old man who was crusty on the bus was like, "Hey, little mama." Like, sir, that's disgusting. You aren't my type. But you can't blame him for trying. He saw something that he liked, right? He had that attraction. He was like, "Oh, I like what I see." Them is hitting people with your card words because they're uncomfortable with their own sexuality. Yes, that becomes an issue. We've been talking about this in my human sexuality class. Those types of things are weird. Oh, yeah, the people on the bus. Yeah, they be funny. Okay, so I promise that all of this has stuff to do with hip-hop because obviously there's a lot of genderized notions within hip-hop in terms of, who should be an artist and what kind of music you should be doing if you're a hip-hop artist and what that means in terms of how you should think about yourself and then how you should express yourself. And it bleeds into the music. It bleeds into the representations and a lot of the shifts that we have, right? Oh my God, since you're so convinced I haven't tried men enough, how about you try it first then? Damn, right. You go ahead and you try and you come back and report, okay? Okay, So, if there's no questions or anything like that, we can go ahead and get out of here. I think we did great today getting done. So, mind your self-care, and I will see you all on Wednesday.